Okay, and we are live. Welcome to the first of our Kent State cast interviews, or 13 seconds in Kent State cast interviews, I really should say. My name is Lance Dean Anthony Nilsson. I'm one of the founders of the Outcast Creative. The other, Dickon Tolson, unfortunately couldn't be with us today. But he will be on future interviews. Also with me is Suzette Pluck, who is one of the producers of the show. And we're fortunate enough to have four of our leading men. It's quite a male-heavy piece, this piece. We'll come on to that in a minute. We've got four of our leading men with us here today. I'll just introduce them one at a time. And if you could say which role you're playing, gentlemen, as we do that. Perhaps I'll hand over to Suzette to do the introductions.
Okay, so first I can see on my screen is a gentleman called Paul Carr. Who will you be playing in our production, Paul?
I will be Ohio Governor James Rhodes.
James Rhodes. And then we have Michael Lipman.
I'm playing Joseph Kellner, the big New York City lawyer who's going to take on the state of Ohio for the Kent State victims.
And we have Rez Kempton.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm playing Fred Sindel, who actually is an amalgamation of two different lawyers, but on the same team with Joseph Kellner.
And last but not least, we have Callum Schooler.
Hi, I'm playing another amalgamated character, Bert Charlie Brown, who is the bad lawyer that is defending the guardsman.
Fantastic. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about our respective actors' careers and also their understanding of the Kent State, the events of Kent State, and also what the kind of work we've been doing on the production. So for those people watching, just so you know, the first part of our production is next Sunday, and it's next Sunday at 8 p.m. GMT time. That's UK time, Greenwich Mean Time. And I believe that means that we'll go live roughly with the production about 3 o'clock East Coast American time. And Rez, who's joining us from Los Angeles, is that 1 o'clock in LA?
That's
or
right,
is it noon? Is it noon?
Noon.
Yeah. So it will be noon on the West Coast. And there are 5 parts. Each part is about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 15 minutes. It's performed live. We'll talk about the perils of doing stuff live shortly. We may be experiencing them ourselves in a minute. We're going to go around and ask each of our actors a series of questions. We are keeping one eye on the chat. So if anybody does watch, and we've got 10 people watching at the moment, please chuck a question in the chat. If you've got any questions for our cast members or our production team, myself and Suzette, and there are 6 of us on the production team, there's only 2 of us here today, just chuck them in the chat and we'll try and answer them. We'll try and get to those. So I think our first question, Suzette, then, to our 4 cast members.
Right, so basically we're going to start with what was your knowledge of Kent State prior to the production? What did you know of the story? Of
the events themselves, and also of the events that we're chiefly focused on, which was the civil trial that took place in 1975, 5 years later. So Rez Kempton, perhaps we can start with you.
Sadly, Lance, I didn't know about Kent State at all, really, and it wasn't until we did the reading of your script that I was like, wow, this actually happened. And considering the relevance of that story right now, what's going on, I was blown away, and didn't know, obviously, subsequently anything about the trial either.
Right. Okay. So basically, you'd not heard of it at all.
No, I didn't know.
So a bit of an education for you. Callum Schooler, who's representing Scotland today. That's the bit on the top of England with the big head. For those people that their geography is not very good. Callum, your knowledge of Kent State and the civil trial that followed prior to this production.
I don't think I knew anything about the trial. I knew from Kent State was that infamous picture of the screaming girl over Geoffrey Miller's body. I think everybody had kind of seen that, and I always enjoyed my history, particularly the history in America around the Vietnam War and the attitudes there. But I was very unaware of why the students were even shot. I just knew it was a tragedy, and then learning more about the trial and how it took place, just to touch on what Rez said, it's so important now to retell that story, because we think, the 70s are a completely different generation, but the same things are just keep happening, and I think it's an incredibly important story to tell as well.
Excellent. Michael?
Like the other guys, I'd never heard of Kent State, and it's probably like the Chicago 7, until it was on Netflix. I hadn't heard about it. But obviously the first time I had heard about Kent State was when I did your script on one of our Monday night readings, which the Outcasts have done regularly over the last year. And then you brought it to the table and we read it. And that's when you decided, right, we'll do a big production of it. And now hopefully more people will know about it. Maybe Netflix will pick up on it for you, Lance, as well.
Well, we can only hope. I mean, it's probably worth mentioning before I move on to Paul that the script's origin, and I've just done a big blog about this, and I'll drop that into chat if I'm able to do so. But the script started off as a feature film. It was not originally a sort of written as a mini series. It was a 3-hour feature film, JFK sort of style, big courtroom drama, big epic feature film, and was first written in 2003. I became aware of Kent State in the 80s, but didn't really understand what it was until I probably saw Born on the 4th of July, which was Oliver Stone's third or fourth movie. And there was some stuff about the discord on campuses in America. Tom Cruise's character was actually involved in one of those campus sort of battles between the police and the guard and stuff, not at Kent State, but at another university where Ron Kovic was actually involved in a sort of an entanglement with them during a protest. And that was when I think Kent State is referenced in that movie. And then I remembered the ABC movie. And so my knowledge of it sort of came to me in bits and pieces. But my original script is not the same one that people are going to see next week and over the subsequent weeks. The 4 kids who passed away, sadly, who were murdered, if you like, they didn't really have a voice in the original script until the end. They're very much at the forefront of this new version. So there are different versions of the production that we're going to do. I think it's probably, you're going to see the one that's specially tailored for a live online theatrical performance with our actors. So Paul, a Native American, one of the Americans of our cast, perhaps you could tell us what your knowledge was prior to this production.
Being an American from the Midwest, I was a young teenage kid at the time of Kent State. I distinctly remember it. There's that Crosby, Stills and Nash song, the 4 Dead in Ohio, that was on the radio thousands of times. And
right.
And it was kind of just the latest, though, of many, violent, the King assassination, the Kennedy assassinations. There was riots all over the country. Cities were burning. So yeah, I was definitely aware of it. And I have no recollection, though, of the trial. By that time I was in college, and I know your script references the guy giving the finger to the cops, and that was me a few years later when I had long hair. So yeah, I have no recollection of the trial whatsoever.
Okay. Interesting. And I mean, as an American at the time that it happened, you remember how it made you feel? I mean, were you shocked? Was it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah, it was just terrible seeing, kids the age of like my big sisters, basically, who were off to college, and I was only a couple states away, and yeah, it was scary. It was frightening, and it was very. Realized now 2 years later, that it really shaped my look on life as far as civil rights and just having to fight for them constantly. And that was one of the incidents that I think was really engraved in my memory.
Mm. Presumably you were too young to get drafted to Vietnam yourself.
I had to go my senior year to the Civil. I had a number, then the war ended by the time my number would have been called. So I just missed it by like a year or so.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So I guess two people that had never heard of it at all, one person who had a vague recollection of it. Obviously, my interest in it grew, but at the time it happened, I hadn't even been born. So yeah. So my first inklings of it was the ABC movie, which starred featured among the cast my friend and mentor Keith Gordon. So is that okay? That's what's our next question.
Next question is, how long have you been acting?
Paul, do you want to take us away on that one?
Sure. Well, I started in college many decades ago, and then I kind of came and went. Really, the last 20 years or so, I've been more of a playwright and a screenwriter and a director and producer. I act occasionally. Was in prop theater here in Chicago, which is the oldest storefront theater in Chicago, and was in some productions there, but primarily as a playwright or director, although I was in my last film as a pretty big supporting role. So I kind of done it intermittently, but really consider myself more of a writer and director.
We've got a question that's just come up in chat, so I'll ask it now. Callum and Paul, do you feel any sympathy for either of your characters? So Paul, just to remind everybody, Paul is playing Governor Rhodes, and Callum is playing Governor Rhodes' lawyer, Bert Charlie Brown, who is based on two real lawyers, Bert Fulton and Charlie Brown, who acted for the guard and the governor. So Callum, any sympathy for your character? Good question from Paul.
I had thought about this as an answer to one of the later questions, but that's actually quite good, because I think to play a character well, you need to believe what they're saying and what their opinions, you need to kind of express it. And the research that I've done behind both Fulton and Charlie Brown is they were both in World War II. They're quite strong conservatives in the rights and freedoms that they represent and stuff. And kind of having that attitude, because I used to have long hair as well. I'm a bit of a hippie. I believe in freedom and peace and rights and all and such. So to try to play a character effectively, to be like, these kids, these guardsmen did the right thing and stuff. It's quite weird. I don't have sympathy as such, but more trying to put myself in their shoes and find that understanding is quite a difficult task.
Yes. Paul, any sympathy for Governor Rhodes?
No. I understand him. I mean, I remember Nixon and Spiro Agnew, his vice president, was really a jerk. If you want to look up any of his quotes in his life, but I understand completely where he's coming from. Seeing plenty of conservative Midwestern politicians, but disagreeing with him as I do, I really have no sympathy. But I'm enjoying playing his part immensely. I think he's a very dastardly character, and I'm really enjoying it.
Okay.
And
Interesting. Rez, do you want to just answer the previous question? Your career up until now, perhaps.
Yeah.
How long have you been acting? When did you start? Maybe mention a couple of the highlights briefly.
Sure. I started really young as a kid. Really, I mean, I got into acting via a friend. I I remember, if anyone's seen that film, Son of Rambo, with Will Poulter in it.
Yeah, I've seen that. I'm a big
it's a
fan
great,
of Will
it's a
Poulter's, actually.
It's a great film. Well, that was me and my buddy at that time. He said we did exactly that in our summer holidays. You know, we made Indiana Jones instead, because they do Rambo in that film. So we made Indiana Jones. So we got our friends together, wrote the script, made the props. You know, did everything. Used his dad's garage, and his dad's garage had a pit that you can work under the car, and we used it as a tomb. We went and bought, cobwebs and all kinds of stuff, and so kind of made our own Indiana Jones version. So that kind of got me the bug, really. And then I went to drama school, kind of went the kind of traditional route in the UK, went to Rose Bruford, and then have been kind of pursuing it ever since then, really. And that's kind of brought me out here to LA a year ago. So I've spent most of my time in LA in my apartment because of the pandemic, but there we go.
And we rescued you with our table reads, so
You certainly
you're
did.
all right now.
You certainly did. So really happy to be part of the Outcasts. Yeah.
Michael, same question.
I started with improv in 2013 with a company called Hoopla in London because after decades of being a hairdresser, I was just totally bored with it, and I really needed something else to do in my life. And I've always, as a hairdresser, you are on stage all the time. So I did improv after seeing Whose Line Is It Anyway for years. Did that, did some live shows, formed my own group. Then I went on to do some stand-up because that was the next natural progressive thing. And then I did some evening courses in London with a company called City Academy. And it was kind of after the first 3 lines that I was given in this class that this light bulb went off, and I thought, this is what I should have been doing all my life. And I've always been involved because I was a music producer, I managed the bands. So I've always been in the arts. And then when I did that course, I just thought, this is what I should be doing. So I did that, put myself on an acting website called Mandy. And I was really fortunate that a final year student at Kingston University in London, it's not London, is it?
Kingston, Surrey, London, yeah.
Surrey, London, right. She saw my bio on Mandy. I had no work to show at all because I had no video stuff from the improv stuff I've done or anything. She just liked how I sounded. She cast me in her final film. And that was my first step. So I'm forever grateful to her because I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for her. And up to date now, I've got a manager, Elaine Eaglestone, who's very proactive. She's been brilliant.
Yeah, no, Elaine.
Yeah, been in adverts, 60 odd films, music videos. And I didn't have the formal training that everyone had. I just had that thing in me that I knew I could do it. I could do acting. And thankfully, I've proven I can do it. So, like Rez has gone the formal route, he's proved that you can do it that way. I've proved you can go the informal route. But if you've got a talent, you can do it. And thankfully, that's where I am now, and hopefully just progressing up that ladder even more.
Must be those classes you did with the Outcasts made all the difference.
It must be. And that's, I've got to admit, your classes have been a lifesaver. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing, is getting off a screen and doing stuff live again, interacting with people, because like your improv classes, it's just fantastic. Improv, I think, is the thing. Anyone out there that wants to go into acting, that's the first thing you should go and do improv, because your whole acting thing is improv. Your facial expressions, if you watch this over the next few weeks, you'll see that we do facial expressions. It's not just staring into a blank screen, you're reacting, and that's improv.
Acting is reacting.
Acting is reacting. But that's my thing for anyone wanting to do it. Go to improv. Go to an Outcast class.
If we can get them up and running in person again, but we are doing some on Zoom. That's true. Callum, what about you?
I've not got much of a career to speak of as of yet. I've been acting since I think it was 2019. So
you came in quite late as well.
Yeah, I've had zero training, never done an acting class, absolutely nothing. And when I was younger, a bit like Rez, I used to pretend to be James Bond and like The first time I remember seeing Saving Private Ryan, like when I was younger, I had planned to go into the army, and that all changed.
Did you build the beach in your back garden with bunkers and was running?
No, I just used to run at my dad with a stick. I was just terrorized, and I was always hyperactive. And I used to be a gymnast. I used to be a competitive gymnast. So I think my mom and dad always encouraged me to do that. They didn't discourage me to do anything. They've been always great support. But I remember in 2019, I was working as a charity fundraiser on the street, and I remember standing there going, "I hate my job. I want to be an actor." And I'd literally, the next week, I had my headshots booked. I had 4 auditions booked. I literally just done that. And my first piece, I need to give a shout out to Theatre Paradox in Edinburgh. They were my first live performance of Mouthpiece. And a massive shout out to Nicola Alexander, my co-star. She was incredible. And yeah, just I remember like first rehearsal, we were just doing the read through, and I was like, this is so much fun. And I remember going into the audition, and actually I was on the train on the way to the audition, and I was terrified because I was like, I have no business in acting. What am I doing? I don't know any of this. This is not my world at all. And I was worried it was going to have to be sort of Shakespeare language, or I'd have to pronounce like RP. And I got in, and I had to play a chav character, or in Scotland we call it a Ned. And I sat down, I didn't even read it. I was like, I've got it. I was like, this is method acting. I've been doing this for 24 years. It'll be fine. But yeah, I remember the first opening night performing live, and it was like, it's just addictive. I just remember that excitement, and on closing night feeling just incredibly miserable, like this can't be over yet, I need to do more. And very fortunately through the pandemic, I did another Zoom production again with Theatre Paradox.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah,
I had no, I mean, we haven't met in person.
No,
in fact, Rez and I have not met in person. Paul and I have, because we met before, and Michael and I have done classes together. But Rez and yourself, I've yet to actually meet you in person. Rez worked on our last online production, Persecution. But if you had told me that you'd had 3 years of training and been in the game for 20 years, I completely would have believed you, because you're as talented as actors that I've met who have been. So I'm quite surprised that you're telling me, oh yeah, I got into it in 2019.
Yeah.
Mate, you should be pretty proud of what you've achieved in that time, because your level of your abilities are pretty good for someone who's only been going for, under 24 months. I mean, I'm quite impressed, actually.
That's
you saved that surprise, didn't you, for the live interview? Awesome. Yeah, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, our cast is a very eclectic mix. We've got people that have been in the game for years, and others that have been in it for 3 or 4, and people like yourself and Michael that have come into it quite late. Old hands like Paul, who've been doing theatres in their back garden since they were 7, and Paul has done productions on stage and films, which I've seen. So we got quite a mixed bunch with us all. So we've got a couple more questions which I'll get to in a second, but let's go back to Kent State. This is quite a challenging piece to do, not least because you're dealing with real people's legacies in some case, and also you have to take great care and respect how you handle the material and the story, because a lot of these people, the injured students, for example, of the 9 of them that were injured, I believe 6 are still alive. And we're in touch with a couple of those. And in fact, 2 or 3 of them have read the script. So it's different. It's different. This is not the same as doing Aladdin at the Nebworth Community Theatre, or, or even doing a comedy, 30-minute comedy for the BBC. This comes with a different weight of responsibility, I feel, than a production of that type. So maybe it would be interesting to hear what kind of research you guys undertook, because of course I told all the actors to do their own research, and we did have a lot of conversations. But Rez, what research did you do for your character of Fred Sindel, who's one of the good guy lawyers, and again, an amalgamation of two real people, we should say?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, Lance, how the story is so relevant now. And I suppose being in America right now at the moment and having, BLM happening, and it was happening on my doorstep, actually. And I could see, demonstrations and people out protesting and, raising the awareness of that really tied in for me when we first read your script about how socially relevant what's happening. And then we had the riot, the Capitol riots in America, in Washington, D.C., only beginning of this year, right? And so tying those events together, everything that's going on in the pandemic as well, and, people standing up for their rights, such a resonant story that, and I remember reading your script and like being in bits, and every week, when we read the various episodes, in hearing each student's story, so moving and so relevant for me. And so what's surprising that there's a lot of material available once you, like I said, I didn't know about it, but since I started researching, a lot of material available about what happened on the day and the events prior, which we cover some of that, but very little actually about the trial. And what I love about our piece is that this is, I think for a lot of people, the trial is not known about. So it's almost like rediscovering what happened in Kent State for me. There's a lot of material about what happened. There's documentaries. There's the film you talked about, which I've seen as well, but very little about the trial. So I think this will be a revisiting of that. And I think for a lot of people, new material that they've won't have seen before or have an awareness of. And of course, the responsibility as well that we have as artists and creatives and on yourself, you said, people that were actually involved have read the script, and, we just want to do the best we can to make, to honor their story and the memories of people that, did lose their life, sadly, on May 4th, 1970.
Were you able to find out much about Sindel specifically? Steve Sindel is one of the guys.
Steve Sindel, yeah, and we've got
Fred Mandel.
Fred Mandel, exactly, yeah. It's amalgamation. Yeah, that he represented the families of that, because obviously court cases are complex, and we're telling a story. And so, what's so clever about your script is how you've tried to condense that and amalgamate characters to kind of make make it work in the medium that we're presenting it in. And obviously we've already got a large cast as it is. I mean, how many have we got in the cast?
I think it's about 40 people, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And so, really there were many more involved. So what's really skillful about the script is like trying to condense as much as we can to make the story still truthful to what happened. And so Fred Sindel, who I play as an amalgamation of these two lawyers, represented the various families as well, and then kind of like were led by Joseph Kellner, really as the lead counsel for the families in the trial. I think it's going to be certainly an eye-opening story for people to kind of see and be involved in, especially in the light of what I said, is going on around us right now.
So can you, Michael, you're playing, I guess we say you're playing the lead, and certainly in the sense that you've got the most lines of Joseph Kellner, who was he kind of headed the lawyers for the families and the plaintiffs, the injured students sort of shot by the guard on the day. What research did you do to get into the role of Kellner? And I've got a funny comment to tell you as well quickly. I spoke to Gregory Payne, who, for those people watching who don't know, fantastic, lovely man, extremely helpful. Gregory was a student at the time Kent State occurred. He arrived there the day after the events in question, and he ended up writing a play, the first play about what happened at Kent State, and it was basically made up of the letters that the students wrote to and from their parents. And we were talking about this production just yesterday, and I said we were talking about Joe Kellner, and I mentioned the comparison to The Sopranos, and he knew Joe Kellner really well, and he said if he's anything like one of The Sopranos, Joseph Kellner would probably be quite happy with that.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Take that as you want.
That's good, because that's kind of how it's kind of a mix of how I've been playing it, a bit Tony Soprano, but also as well, I needed to find, because Joseph Kellner was a Jewish New York lawyer, I needed to find somebody that was kind of like that. And what I used for a character is basically Peter Falk as Columbo. It was
that's good.
yeah. So I've watched a lot of Peter Falk documentaries and him being interviewed. And that's how I kind of base my character on him, to get the accent right, to get even some mannerisms right. Because in court, there's things where I'm questioning a witness. It's disbelief. So I kind of using that hand off the forehead bit that Columbo did. It's like, oh, just one more thing. But basically, my research, there's not a lot other than the book that you told me about Joseph Kellner. I haven't had time to read that, but as an actor, you put yourself in the position of that character. You are a lawyer in a courtroom questioning somebody, and I've been in courts before, so I know how they present themselves. There's enough courtroom drama on TV and film to be able to use that as research. But the Kent State stuff was there's a 1980s film that was made about Kent State, about the shooting. So it wasn't the court, but it was the shooting. So it kind of gives you that, it gives you the feeling. So you kind of can whop yourself up inside with that. I know what happened, so I can bring that 5 years on from 70 to 75 to the court case and be Joseph Kellner. And anyone who watches the series that we're doing online, you'll see the frustrating thing is it's a constant uphill struggle against, it's Joseph Kellner and the team and the victims' parents and the victims against a state, a court and a judge that is so biased. It don't matter what you do in there. You could come in singing and dancing, you could have every right answer, but the state are just against you. So it's interesting playing that. I mean, it would be lovely to play that live or on screen, but it's lovely getting that part. And I love being somebody else. I'm a character actor. I love getting into that. And obviously the people that are watching this don't know, but I came into the rehearsal, even into the audition, dressed as Joseph Kellner. I
remember that.
Yeah, I need to be. Obviously, I wouldn't do that if I was going in front of a casting director live, because you just don't do that. But I thought, I'm on screen, you know me. I wanted to be that part, and it helps me immerse myself into that character. So this is the first time I've done any Kent State stuff in my own clothes, and that's weeks we've been rehearsing.
Yeah, I'm not used to seeing you in your golfing costume.
No, I'm sitting on +4s as well.
Paul, if I can ask you the same question, what sort of research have you done on Governor Rhodes? You might have been somewhat more familiar with him before the production, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, everything I read on him jibed pretty much exactly with his dialogue in the script as a hard right law and order candidate.
Yeah.
And when I saw a picture of him like huddling cheek to cheek with Richard Nixon, I was like, okay, I know exactly who this guy is.
Okay.
But I'm kind of playing him more of as an amalgamation, like a little bit of LBJ in there maybe, because he was a real hard ass too, even though he was a Democrat and Nixon's obviously a Republican. But being from Illinois too, we win kind of a perverse prize every year. We're usually awarded the honor or the dishonor of being the most corrupt state in the United States, and in Chicago in particular. So I've always been fascinated by political corruption and really done extensive research. I have like files on all these sorts of politicians where I've like dozens and dozens and dozens of newspaper articles out and going back decades. So I've always kind of like absorbed political corruption in my scripts too. Like when I first met you and I did Busted City, which was about
right with the mayor.
The first black mayor in Chicago and all what he was against. So yeah, I've always been fascinated by political corruption, and I'm sure Governor Rhodes had quite a few skeletons in his closet if all the truth ever came out.
Yeah. Did you track down the speech that he gave? Because there is a recording of that speech, I think, to be found online.
You know what? I got to do that yet. I didn't come across that yet, but I came across plenty on him to
There's a lot.
inform me. The way he's presented the script is really quite accurate.
Right.
He was always hustling for a vote too. So
That's true. He was.
Yeah.
He was quite successful at hustling for votes as well. He was voted governor, I think, 4 times.
yeah, he won again after this.
Yeah, he did.
Wow.
He got defeated in the 80s, I think, when they made it an election issue, and by then people's minds.
He was popular, and when he lost once, I read he lost by like 3,000 votes out of 900,000 cast.
Yeah,
So even when he lost, it was close.
yeah.
He was popular in Ohio.
Wow.
The spirit of Trump was with him, clearly.
Well, it's a very conservative state. Yeah, it's very conservative there. Yeah.
Callum, so Charlie Brown / Bert Fulton, the 2 characters that your single lawyer is based upon.
I mean, it was
Obviously, you saw the physical resemblance to yourself when you found the photo, so you can see why we cast you.
that one.
That's the one, yeah. We just thought that's Callum straight away when he's younger. I think that photo's taken that's a long time after the court case, though.
Yeah,
He probably would have been in his 40s.
it was very difficult to find anything on any of the defense legal team, bar their names mentioned in some brief newspaper articles. But that's how deep I tried to kind of go into this. I mean, when we first connected, Lance, you kind of told me about the project, and I was like, wow, this kind of sounds serious. I'm going to kind of look into this. And I read through the script, looked more into it, and I was like, oh my God. And I mean, I can't speak highly enough of this production to be a part of retelling that story, even though I'm playing technically the bad lawyer. And he definitely is bad. I don't like him, but it's quite fun getting to play that character. Like, I am enjoying it because he's just the most condescending guy ever, and to shout objection every 5 minutes. Like, I thought I need to be 15 years into my career before I got to say objection on camera, and I'm really happy.
And he's there's a lot of stuff he did, or they both did in the courtroom, that we can't really show in the online production. He did things like scraping of chairs and moving of tables, and and of course there's a whole load of other courtroom shenanigans that take place, which we won't give spoilers to, that the audience will get to see. But yeah, so fantastic. What's our next question, Suze?
The next question is, what are the challenges with a live performance?
Challenges of a live performance, or maybe the biggest challenge for you as an actor. And somebody's asked a question similar to that.
Yeah.
In chat, they've said the Z word, but I'm not going to mention that. But maybe you could talk about the challenges of doing an online thing like this. Michael and Rez both were in Persecution, which is on our channel. You can see it. And that, I'll just sort of preface that with, that was our first attempt at doing a live online show. It was very much in its infancy. We were experimenting with a lot of things. So it's not going to be quite as technically, Kent State is going to be a lot more technically fine-tuned than Persecution. Rez, what are the challenges of a live online performance for you?
I think because of the pandemic right now, I mean, I think for a lot of actors, this is how a lot of people are kind of consuming content right now, aren't they? I mean, because theatres are all closed, so nobody's going to the theatre. So it's almost like a new way of working, sort of a hybrid of like film and television as well as theatre. And what I love about it is the excitement of it being live, having to juggle internet connections and things. So there's always that's at the back of your mind, making sure that because we've got no technical support here. We're on our own, so we're having to do our lighting, our sound, and everything ourselves, as well as the acting. Costume, yeah, exactly, yeah. When we're in a professional production, be it theatre or film or TV, there's people to help you do all of that, and here, you know, we're having to kind of do that ourselves. So there's that element of it that is a challenge. And actually, you know, because we are just contained within these boxes, the acting of it certainly has been a big learning curve for me, and learning how to use the frame that we're in, and just that frame. And I think most actors will relate to that now, because we're all doing it. You know, our meetings, our auditions are online. You know, we're having to do that, or, you know, having to do tapes at home. So I think it's definitely an interesting medium, and I think one that kind of lends itself. I think we'll see more productions going this way. I think it's an interesting hybrid, as I said.
So what do you feel about, because when you're acting in your space, but you're having to interact with somebody online, how does that feel? Do you feel the same energy as if you're in the room with them?
I can't, Suzette, I can't say that, you know, I miss it so much being live with people, you know, the energy, the you know, just that contact of people. I'm really missing that element, especially live performing, you know, theatre. But it is different. It's more intimate in a way, because, you know, we're constantly just in that frame and in that box. So yeah, there's some things we're gaining, and there's some, but definitely a lot that we're losing. But I suppose it's kind of leaning a little bit more into film and TV, because we're, you know, working mainly in close up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've just cut you to a close up just then. Paul, how do you find the challenges?
Well, I think regardless of the forum, you know, when you have a script, you got to pay close attention to your cues. That's always a key, I think, any production, no matter where it's at. I think I agree with Rezo. It's nice to look somebody in the eye you're interacting with, especially if you're having an edgy conversation of some sort, and you know, maybe find something you don't like about them, you know, the way they look, the way they smell, whatever, to interact with. But and just a few little technical things, like my little thing that says you have green screen. I always had to remember, even if it's checked, I had to turn it off and then turn it back on for my proper screen to come up. I always had to remember to do those few little technical things. But
Stuff.
Is that why we've got a nice green screen behind you at the moment?
I thought it'd be a nice change of pace.
Yeah, that's good. It's good. It's good.
I mean, it took a little work. I screened it off in the spare bedroom here and put 4 lights around it, so it was fun.
Good way to stand out. Governor Rhodes attracting attention.
For votes.
Michael, how are you? What are you finding the challenges?
I've got everything that Paul and Rez just said. There's nothing much more for me to add. They basically covered it, other than, again, what Rez said, is a stable internet connection, because I've had to switch my phone to airplane mode. My iPad is on airplane mode, so I'm not drawing anything off of my Wi-Fi, and I've got a strong Wi-Fi. But sometimes, especially on Zoom, for some reason, it just drops out. So I could be in the middle of one of my big speeches in this production, and I do not want that to happen. So for me, we don't
want that to happen either. When you talked about 5 times during Persecution in a single episode, that kept us on our toes.
But luckily, I got back in again at the right time, so that was
shit.
But yeah, definitely, a stable internet connection is probably the most important thing for me.
You have to have a calmness about you, because I find with Zoom, you have to stay extremely calm in case those things happen, because you have to stay clear-headed to sort it out, and that's a different energy you have to find to deal with that.
Yeah, and the technical challenges, we're having to like unmute ourselves, come up, put our cameras on, having to remember that. So, you know, there's a lot of things that's on the actor that, you know, that normally isn't there. We don't, you know, just show up, perform, and, you know, someone else is doing all of that for you. Here, it's all on us.
Yeah, we're basically an acting version of a one-man band. That's what we are.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So Callum, you did an online performance just before this. You started rehearsing this one, which Suzette and I caught your scenes of. I think Suzette saw the whole thing. I saw
the whole lot. I thought it was brilliant.
And we were very glad we cast you when we saw you in that, because we saw you came on and we like, is that the same guy? So
Yeah.
totally different character. How are you finding, maybe you can answer it, how are you finding this production compared to that one? Obviously this is a bit more complex, it's a bigger show.
The size of it is very different. It was it was 4 actors, a director and a producer on the last one, and it was very relaxed, and it was Theatre Paradox. It's just student theatre group. Nearly got tongue tied there. So I think they were just trying to do what we were doing, is kind of keep the arts alive during the pandemic, and it was very new for them. Whereas this is very professional and very technical, and I feel like I'm in a TV studio, because as I said, I've got very little experience. I'm learning almost every day whenever I'm doing anything, and I love doing the rehearsal with you guys, because I feel like I'm already soaking up some talent. I'm like, thank God. But
Yeah, you do learn a lot from the people around you.
yeah,
I think, even the biggest actor in the biggest leagues, whether, I don't want to name any names, but I mean, well, okay, I'll name one. Jason Fleming, who is in this production with us, will tell you himself that, he's quite a humble guy. When he's on set with anybody, whether it's a kid just out of drama school or someone who's been in the game 20 years, he'll tell you he's always learning. And you never stop learning, whether you're a director, whether you're a writer, whether you're an actor, you never stop learning in this industry. And most of it comes by doing things and trying things out and facing your fear and taking risks. But a lot of what you learn comes from working with other people and seeing how they do things, and adapting and trying out the things that work for you, I think,
yeah, absolutely.
I learn from Dickon, who runs the Outcast with me. I watch him direct, he watches me direct, and I pick up things from him in sessions that I'll then use when I'm working with an actor one-to-one, and we're both very different with our skill sets, but that's why we make a great team, because we'll come at the cast with 2 very different things. So me personally, the challenge of working with a big cast, there's always challenges, because it's 40 different personalities, and and when you do a big cast on a production, if we're all working for nothing on this, somebody always drops out, and that sometimes not through any fault of their own. Granddad might get ill or whatever, someone always drops out, but they have to. Something happens in their personal life, or they've overcommitted. They wanted to do it, but they're just too busy. And we had that on Persecution. We had a couple of cast changes. We've had a couple of cast changes on this, but it's a great cast and a great crew. And I think we've, when you see where we are in rehearsals now, with the scenes, some of the scenes are so moving.
Oh, yeah.
It would be so great to see it as a TV series, but even just what we're doing with these limitations, just look at the quality of the acting. It's fantastic. Not including my American accent, of course. But that aside, we're doing pretty well, I think.
There's a lot of teamwork going on in the background as well.
Yeah. A lot of cast pulling together, helping each other out with costumes, and we're doing our background sets and stuff.
Work.
So yeah, I mean, absolutely. So what? Just pulling away from Kent State, we'll come back to it again before the end. Maybe we could go around and ask people what else they've got going on. Your opportunity to plug your other things, be it your Macarena band, karaoke night, or your film that you've got coming out in a few weeks' time. Rez, let's start with you. You've got some things coming up, I believe.
Yeah, no. Actually, yeah. I've got a film coming out. It's a psychological thriller. I'll call it that. It's called Held. It'll be out in the cinemas and on platform, either Netflix or Amazon, depending on which country you're in. On the 9th of April. So I'm pretty excited by that. And it's interesting because quite often that genre is quite male orientated and written and made normally by men. But our film is written by our female lead. So it's an interesting
Oh, right.
perspective. Yeah, so the actress in it wrote the film.
Okay.
If you've seen the trailer, you'll
I have
see
seen the trailer.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm trying to grab a single image to show people, but Google Images is being annoying.
Yeah, so Jill wrote the film and does a brilliant job in it as well. So I really like it that it's a quite little twist on that, in that it's from a female perspective. So yeah, no, I'm really excited by that. That's coming out.
The basic plot is a married couple sort of go to get away and
yeah,
in a really nice cool house, but things go a bit awry.
Exactly.
I'm not saying anything that's not in the trailers.
No, exactly. Yeah. And I suppose there's a parallel that they get locked in the house, and there's that parallel now of lockdown, happening to everybody in the world. But obviously, when we shot it the summer before, we didn't know about this coming up. So it's interesting that it's happened together.
There's some images, guys, up on Google. I believe this is the male and female.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So this is the lady who wrote it.
Jill. Yeah.
Fantastic. Paul, you got any things in the work? Because I know you're a director like myself, and you're often doing theatre or film projects.
Actually, I have a feature film that's we shot before the pandemic, around 83 minutes, something like that. It's almost it's a few months away from completion. It's in post. I'm not going to put it in festivals till 2022. I have another. It's my fourth feature that I wrote, directed, and produced, and my previous one is still in the festivals, called Empire. It's my actors, Nick Leininger, Don Schroeder, won Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor awards, and we've won some other awards. The one before that was a film kind of about the psychological trauma of the Donald Trump era, especially his impact on women, called American Barbarian, which won a lot of awards. Yeah, won a lot of awards. And then prior to that was Busted City, my film where I met you overseas in Europe, which is about political corruption and struggle for civil rights in Chicago. So, but anyway, by 2022, I'll have that film out in the world.
I've found American Barbarian on IMDb. Got a very respectful rating of 8.3.
Yeah, it's kind of a B-movie style, but it was very effective, and people in Europe loved it. I had really good reception over there.
These are some of the stills. So this is kind of what would you call it? A sort of dark comical look on Trump?
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a psychological horror film / dark comedy. It's very funny in parts, but it's also disturbing.
So is that, look, someone's converted several of your old pairs of clothes into art there.
Unbelievable.
We shot it all over Chicago too. It was really fun.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. So I'm going to try and track that one down, and we look forward to the next one. Michael, what's next for you?
Nothing at the moment, but I decided a few months ago to make my own short mockumentary called Yenta, which is basically about a man who just cannot stop rabbiting on the phone, letting everyone know his business. And I had this idea for a while, so I thought, you know what, I'm not doing anything. I'll shoot it myself here in the house. Play the interviewer, who you don't ever see, and this guy called Clive Steiner. And I thought, well, you know what? I've got it. I've made it. It's a 10-minute thing. I'm going to stick it into the festivals. So I put it into the Cannes Short Film Festival. I'm just waiting to hear if that gets accepted. I'm not sure if it will. I'm not sure if it's the thing that they're looking for. But if you don't try, you don't know. So, but it was a challenge for me because I was procrastinating on doing it, and I had this idea, and I kept changing the script every time I went out for a walk. And it was good that I did that because I was happy with the finished product. So other than that, I mean, loads of auditions, but at the moment, like all the actors here know, you're up against other actors that are not working in theatre at the moment. So I do mainly screen stuff.
Yeah.
and you've got that gene pool now in with you. So once the theatres start again, hopefully there'll be less of us going for one part. But as most actors know, it's very hard at the moment trying to get that one part.
Crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Callum, what
I've-
news from Scotland?
Sorry?
What news from What news from the north?
Hee-haw, because I'm in Manchester.
Oh, well, that's if you're from London, that's still the north.
Yeah, no, my wife, she's from Sheffield originally, well, Yorkshire, and she always whenever she's talking to her family, she says, you know, well, the northerners so much better. And I'm looking, going, you're south to me, like, you wish you had Northern Tail. No, I've not really got anything on the horizon. I'm always looking for something new and something fun. I have tried a bit of writing during the pandemic. But my kind of trouble is I get a really good idea, I get about halfway through writing it, and then I go, I don't know, that's not that good. And then it sits for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then I'll be farting about and I'm like, well, I wrote that thing, maybe I should go back to it. So I've kind of been on a cycle of that for a bit.
Maybe we should do a writing session together, and I can see if I can.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you the idea. It's a hitman that plays cat and mouse with a target. He's been a hitman for 10 years, and he goes in, and this sleazy guy, standard business, he kind of just thinks, do you know what, I'm not going to kill him instantly. Why have I got a price in your head? And they have this kind of back and forth. And he's kind of coming from like the zero emotion, logical argument. This guy's in fear and panic, being like, no, I don't deserve to die, but he is really kind of a scumbag. So yeah, I'm just kind of working on an idea like that, because as Michael and all of us have said, is, you know, when you are going for an audition just now, there's so many more people and they've been in TV, they've been in film, student theatre, live theatre, and they're all going for that now on-screen production. And it's,
well, you need to have a word with Toby and Kenny and get a part in Henry V, which is the next thing the Outcasts are doing after this, during which time I will be taking a nice break. But I think quite a few of the regulars will be getting involved in that, and I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. And we've got the dates for it already, funny enough. We've done the dates. I keep meaning to tell Dickon, but I'm sure if he watches this, now he knows they've been done. So that's going to perform in June, I think towards the end of June. And they're going to start casting it as soon as Kent State performances are finished. So there's a couple of days, a couple of casting sessions, and going out to Outcast regulars first. So that's anybody who's done an Outcast production before, which includes all of you. So there you go. Suzette, what's next for you? Sleeping and resting for a really long time.
Well, this has been, I've never done the part of a producer before. I've never done production in as intense as.
Yeah, fun, isn't it?
I'm having such a great. No, it has. I really am enjoying it. It's very busy, but working with some really nice people. Met some very nice people on this.
Great.
Great. Enjoying it.
Well, I want to bring it back to Kent State before we finish, because I think we've been on for an hour now, and I think an hour is long enough. But we've got a couple of questions, and if anybody's watching and wants to ask another question, I know there's a slight time delay on that. Do it now, then they'll come up. But Josie, that name sounds very familiar, Josie Ayres. She asked an interesting question, what has the American response been in regard to a primarily English cast theatre company performing this pivotal event in American history? And that's an interesting one. We have got more Americans in the cast. Paul's not the only one. There are 4 of them. Paul, have you had any conversations with people? I'll talk a bit more about the people from involved in Kent State in a second, but have you had any conversations with people about that? Anything along those lines?
Well, I think it's great there's interest in this event, because I think it has worldwide implications for any, opposed alleged democracy where things like this could happen, and like the relevance the other people have spoken of, and I think it's very important. So and I think it's a challenge sometimes. Some of the vernacular is, it's interesting. Some of the words that are a little you know, strange maybe between the British and the American culture. It's probably a little tricky sometimes, I think, it's like it would be for me to play an Englishman's part. So I applaud the actors for taking on those verbal challenges. And actually, one quick shout out, I really enjoying the work of the lawyers and the judge too. I'm really enjoying that. So I think they've all done a terrific job.
Yeah, we'll be interviewing Kenny another time, who's playing the judge. He's one of our sort of hardcore regulars, I would say, up there with the Michaels and Rezes of this world. But yeah, I mean, I obviously, that's been something that's been on the forefront of my mind, that question. I mean, that's part of the reason I did that blog about why I did the production. And actually, I'll put the link for that in chat, which I meant to do earlier, but I forgot, so that it will stay in the chat for anybody watching this in case they haven't seen it before. And so I just dropped that in now. For me, it wasn't the fact that it was American, an event in American history was neither really here nor there. It was more about the fact that students were protesting in their university, they were shot at and they were killed. And I didn't need to know any more than that. And this event could have happened in Mexico or somewhere like that, and I still would have been interested, because these are the sorts of subjects that interest me. Because I think we all have an inherent responsibility to try and affect change in society, or to try and maintain the things that we feel are important. Democracy, I feel, is very important to maintain, and it's constantly being undermined. I do wonder how many of our freedoms will be curtailed when the pandemic is over and we find there's all this legislation that's been sneaked in because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And you'll come back and you think life will go back to normal, but now the police have all these more powers because of the pandemic, which is now over. But all that stuff got shoehorned in, and I think there'll be quite a lot of things like that we don't realise that will become apparent later. I mean, the fact that I remember when Black Lives Matter happened, and you know, when the momentum of that took off, that was as the pandemic was happening. But people felt so strongly about it that they still went out and they still protested, which I really applauded, I've got to say. And I really wanted to go. I really wanted to go myself on a couple of those, but because I was on the vulnerable list, that was not happening. But it was this whole last sort of 14 months, for me, just underscored the whole reason for doing this. It's so important. And that was when we did the first read through of the old script, and we did kind of what we're doing now. We kind of went round everybody to see what people thought. I think the most common comment that was referenced was, God, isn't it strange how little things have changed? Somebody said. I can't remember who said that. Maybe it was Rez even, but somebody said that. And and I thought, shit, you know what, you're right. They haven't changed that much. You know, we protest about something that we don't like the government doing. The policing is always really very heavy-handed and you know, very heavy-handed. Look at the protest the other day over the on Clapham Common, with the whole thing with the woman being murdered by that police officer. Allegedly, he hasn't been convicted yet, so I don't know the full facts of that case, and I've heard some strange things about that case, so I'm very interested to see what comes out. But you know, there was a protest about that, and we know it wasn't legal because the pandemic rules are still in place. I have to say I agree with that, because we're not going to get over this thing if we don't abide by those rules. But I also agree that people wanted to protest, and I'm not sure. I think they should have just been allowed to do their thing, socially distanced correctly. I don't think there was a need to sort of come in heavy-handed. I don't think that really sent a good message in this time of when people are facing real hardship. I don't think they want to be bashed around the head by batons to be reminded that times are hard. I don't know. Anyone else want to chip in? But those are my thoughts. Um,
Well, it's interesting. We're coming up to the 51st anniversary of Kent State, and to
Yeah.
think that's happening in this pandemic era, there's a real risk of violence towards you if you protest something, is very true. So it's interesting that we're still in those times, but it's a little bit more stark at the moment than before.
Yeah. And you had very violent responses from the police prior to the pandemic at the various marches that occurred even before George Floyd. You know, there was several very high profile killings of police before by police of civilians in America before George Floyd. My friend Dylan, who is a documentary filmmaker primarily, he made a documentary called Loose Change about 9/11, which kind of went viral and, you know, explored a lot of the theories about what happened at 9/11. But he did another documentary called Black and Blue, and he started making it about 2 years before BLM had ever, you know, anyone had ever heard of that. 2 years before George Floyd, and it was all about the police in America and, you know, the level of force used and various people that had died in police custody or while being arrested. And as he was making it, I kept messaging him saying, by the way, mate, on the news, there's another one being killed. Do you want to follow that up? You know, I know you're still making your documentary. I think I ended up sending him about 20 messages, and there were just so many of them that he couldn't even fit them all in.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, we do live in I don't know, quite a scary time in a lot of ways. Not pandemic, democracy all being eroded. It's maybe we should end on a different note. We know that relatives of people that were killed on May 4th, 1970, as well as those who were injured and relatives of those who were injured, and also people that were there who were affected by it. We hope these people are going to be watching our production. We know some of them are going to be watching it. So for the people directly affected by it, maybe we should end on a message for them. I'll start by just saying it's a real honor and a privilege to tell this story. I take it very seriously. It might just be an online sort of theatrical performance, but it's a legacy which I'm handling with great care, and I hope that comes across when you see part one of the production next Sunday. Suzette, you want to go next?
Yeah, it's staying here. It's an absolute honor, and being born in the 70s, I've always had that photo. But to get the real characterizations for the actors to flesh out those characters and bring them to life has just been a joy to watch, but it also extremely moving. So it's nice to be on this side and be part of the production team and watching it all come together. So yeah, thank you.
Callum?
Yeah, I mean, as I said to you almost daily, Lance, it's a huge honor to be a part of a production of this magnitude this early into my career. I mean, there is several times, I think Rez said this earlier, when we're in rehearsal, where I'm glad that I'm not in for a few scenes because I've got tears in my eyes. The messages from the students, you know, the people injured, and I hope the people, any eyewitnesses or a family of the victims, please don't hate me too much for playing Bert Charlie Brown. But to tell a full story, especially in today's climate where you get left-wing news and right-wing news and everything's so polarized, this truly does dig up all sides of the story, everyone's point of view from it, everyone's perspective. And as you know, we just mentioned, it's such an important story to tell in today's world, to help tell that story or keep the events of that day alive. It's a massive honor.
Paul?
I think it's really vitally important for historically accurate political dramas such as this to be in the forefront. You read stories about some like younger people that don't know what the Holocaust was, not the deniers, they just don't even know what it was. So, it's that old saying, if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. So
Yeah.
I'm thankful to be
And
part of it.
we are repeating it.
Yeah, too many times, as a kid, I'd see like all these assassinations and terrible things happening. I always kind of thought, well, maybe this is the awful price we pay for progress, but we're repeating so much that we shouldn't be. And so I think something like this story, I'm thankful to be a part of it, a small part that keeps it in people's minds, and hopefully we can all learn something from it.
Michael, before you return to the golf course.
I'm teeing off in about 10 minutes, so I need to go. I can't argue with anything that's gone on, but I think what makes this harder as an actor as well is that you have people that are alive from when this happened. It's not like you're doing a historical thing where everyone's dead from 100 years ago. So you hear actors say you've got this responsibility. We'll find out how well we did after the first episode when the people that were involved in it have got some interest in it genuinely. Let us know what they think, and then we'll know we're on the right track. That's going to be interesting.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Well, just as well we're in a room for one doing this. That's why.
And last but by no means least, Rez.
Well, everything what everyone said, but also what Paul said really resonated with me. I remember at school, doing history and thinking as a kid, wow, this was all going on, and our history teacher saying, so history shows us who we are. And that couldn't be more relevant right now, really, with everything going on and all the different things that we've mentioned during the pandemic. I'm more aware of demonstrations now than I ever was, to be honest. Stop Asian hate, all of these different movements happening. And, you're absolutely right, Lance, the police's response in all of these events happening has been fairly strong. I've been lucky in my career to play and do lots of stories that are based on real events, and the responsibility on us as artists and performers to tell those stories, to honor the memory of people who lost their lives, for freedoms that we have, or that we're struggling to even now have, is so important. So I think such a relevant story, certainly has enlightened me. I didn't know about it, as I said right at the beginning. Absolutely, as Callum said, I'm glad I get breaks in it and we can turn our camera off, because I am in bits. There's some amazing performances by very talented actors in our story. So all I can say, have your hankies and tissues ready, because you may want to go out and demonstrate yourself after seeing this.
That's true.
Certainly.
It's fantastic. Well, we'll just end by saying we're going to be doing more interviews with more of the cast over the coming days. I think our next one is going to be, I believe it's at 6 or 6:30 on Thursday. So do join us then. And we're going to have the actors who are playing the students who are injured. And we don't represent all of them in our show, simply because we didn't have enough cast. Actually, it's a simple reason. We didn't have quite enough actors to cover all of the parts, even with people doubling up and some things. So I know not everybody was as proactively involved in the trial as some, but I had to kind of, they're there and we mention them, but you won't get to see them, unfortunately. But I'll talk more about that on Thursday. So set your calendars, please, everyone, for next Sunday, 8 o'clock, we go live with episode 1 of 13 Seconds in Kent State. Episode 1 is called Jeff. I'll let you find out why when you watch that. It's a Google will, give you a bit of a giveaway there. It just remains for me to say thank you to the actors for coming on and giving up their time for free on Easter Saturday. Much appreciated. Big thanks to Suzette, our producer, who's assisting us all with many little trivialities that just help the production move along smoothly. And we will see you all on Sunday when we're in performance mode, and it is performing live, so people do need to come and watch it live. You may not be able to see it later, So you need to come and watch it live. And we'll be performing for the next 4 Sundays in a row at the same time, and on May the 4th itself, which is a Tuesday. Okay, so guys, we're gonna stop the live, say goodbye to our audience, and thank you very much for watching. This interview will remain online so people can watch it later, and we'll see you again soon. We'll be back on Thursday for another interview, and back on Sunday for part 1. So